So internet contracts are something that's kind of controversial among lawyers. There are some lawyers that don't like advising people or business owners to ever touch internet contracts. By internet contracts, I mean a contract that you're just deciding to go on your own to buy and use. And I'll say buy for a reason. So sometimes, it's not practical to use an attorney, especially when you're first starting out because of cost. But you also want to be protected. So I am actually a proponent of using internet contracts as long as you use them correctly. And so one of those things, so one of the reasons, or one of the ways you use it correctly is you use it as a short-term strategy. You use it as a cost-saving strategy until you make enough money to hire an attorney that can put contracts in place for you that you know are going to be legally enforceable. Don't think that you can just go 20 years of business without having, with relying on internet contracts. You will get burned at some point. I've seen it. I've had clients who've used contracts that they downloaded from the internet, and they've had provisions in them. One example is, I'll give an example, is my client had a beauty parlor, and they used, I'm changing the facts a little bit to preserve confidentiality, but the business was in Florida. The partner downloaded a contract on the internet for a non-compete, and the contract had a provision that made the contract govern according to North Dakota law. So even though they were a Florida company, I couldn't help them with that contract because I don't know North Dakota law. And so what happened is, obviously they didn't read what they were downloading, and they had people sign them, and now they're in situations where now they're gonna have to find another lawyer in North Dakota to help them enforce this contract. So that kind of brings up that last point here, the rare choice of law, because what happens on the internet is you could try to look for a contract that works for you, that looks like it works for you, but if it's governed by a different state, then there's nothing that you can do. That a Florida attorney could do very little to help you if something goes wrong. So because I am a proponent of using internet contracts in certain circumstances. So here's a list of do's and don'ts if you're going to have to use an internet contract. Don't just blindly copy and paste the contracts. Actually go through it and make sure you understand what it actually says. If you don't understand it, don't use it, especially if you're trying to have other people sign it. And also, don't use contracts that are free. Just because you can't afford a business attorney doesn't mean that you go the opposite way and only look at contracts that you're getting for free. There's services out there that you can pay very small amounts for contracts that are better than nothing. They're better than the ones that are in Google, because at least they will be vetted in a way that you can feel comfortable knowing that at least some attorney looked at it in some way. Again, they're not exactly advisable as a long-term strategy, but at least it gets the job done in the short term. Again, so which brings us to the do's. Do use it if you just don't have money to pay an attorney. Again, these databases, they sell those contracts. What I like to do, I remember before I started my practice, and even when I was in law school, if I had to use a contract, because I did have a company when I was going to law school, I would compare different versions of these database contracts and then use them together. Because in my opinion, my thought was, if I could find multiple contracts that have the same information in them, then it means that there's got to be a reason that's there. So it's important to use. And use contracts that are related to your industry, because every industry has specific nuances that may not practically apply to you. So you just want to be aware of that if you're going to go take this step and use these online contracts.